Working. Cool. So yeah, my name is Christopher Chedeau. Like first time somebody actually like says it like mostly properly. So congrats. And I've done some like open source projects that were successful. So I collected a bunch of stars across my 12 years at Facebook. And my goal for this talk today is to try to like explain what are the things that I've like done, and like hopefully you're going to be able to apply them. Now, like there's a big disclaimer, big warning, like there's a big survivor bias. I happen to be successful. I don't know like actually what I did to make it successful, but I'm going to try. And so the first thing that happened is 12 years ago, I got an offer to join Facebook. I was in France, I was in college and everything. And my wife, my girlfriend at the time for 4 years, like there was a big decision to make. She had to actually move halfway across the world with me. We had to get married, and she gave me like one piece of advice. And this is, you need to solve a real problem. And so probably like many of you, like I'm a geek, I love to tweak around, like fiddle with stuff and like do like a bunch of side projects. And she basically told me that like, hey, look, I'm not like moving halfway across the world so you get fired because you work on random stuff. So please like work on random stuff, but that are actually useful for the company you're going to be. And this has been like this advice has stayed with me like for a long time. And this is now how I think about like open source and about like project is I want to actually make them successful and like solve a real problem. And so I was talking with Prime like in backstage, and he told me that there's basically two ways to do open source. There's public source, where you're just like randomly throwing everything you're doing in public, and you don't necessarily want it to be successful. And then there's like successful open source. Well, like now, like open source, you have an intent to actually make a real good product, like something that's going to like actually like sell and be useful. And so this is the second part that we're going to talk about in this talk. Then, so now, okay, now you want to be successful, you're excited. Now you probably need an idea of like what project should I be working on. And so if you look at the space of project you could have within like the world of software, there's basically two main areas. So there's one which is like a product, and one which is infrastructure. And so one thing I found is looking at like all of the GitHub project is like the vast majority of the top projects are about infrastructure. And so like React, React Native, like Angular, like all of this is like things you depend on to actually build your product. And so it doesn't mean that like you cannot have a successful open source project that is something external like a product. So we've done this with Excalidraw, but the vast majority is infrastructure. So this is like the landscape and those kind of things. And then the next part, I actually like I've been thinking about this presentation for a while, and I've been thinking about a mini game that you can all play together. Now, a lot of people, when I pitched the idea, told me like this is never going to work. Like, how can you get like 100 people like working together and doing stuff? But I think this audience is the right one for this. So raise your hand if you want to play. Ooh, okay, so a lot of people want to play. Cool. So for the setup of this game, I'm going to ask a question. And so I'm going to give you like a minute to think about the question. So I highly recommend like closing up your laptop, like your phone and everything, because if you don't actually have the, like think about the answer, you're going to look awkward in a minute. So you probably want to play the game. And so the question is, who is your tech role model? So like who do you like want to be in the future? Like who do you aspire? Like who's like gets you excited to like wake up in the morning and like get to work on? So think about this. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds. Cool. So yeah, I see a lot of people thinking it's good. So now what we're going to do is the rightmost people, so it's going to be your left, like the people on this side at the far edge, what you're going to do is to say who your tech role model is to the person that's to your right. So go ahead, like you, tell like the person to your right, like who is it? Come on, everybody, like you need to play. Come on, second row, you can do it too. Perfect. So now, like the second person says to the next one, and now I think you get it. So like the next one, when you've heard like the tech role model, you go to the left, and then you keep iterating like this. So it should be an O of 12, 15. So keep going, keep going. So we are about here. Oh, the first person crossing the line. So is the first row going to be the first? Okay, now like we're getting there. This is cool, I'm seeing a few more. Well, I think it stopped over there, like, come on, the middle rows. Okay, so I don't think like you really wanted to play the game. Like, did you get everybody on this side? No, yeah. Okay. Well, I tried. I can tell the other people like they were right, didn't work. But so now, what is the point of this exercise? So the first part is like this is a conference, and one part is like the boring talks and everything, but the other part is like networking, like connecting with people. So hopefully, like your neighbors, now you get to know some of them, and like when we do happy hours, like breaks and everything, now you have like some kind of conversation starter. Then the second part and the most important part in this case is all of the names that you mentioned, they have like one thing in common. They actually talked or spoke or like wrote about the thing that they were excited about, the thing that they built, the thing that they like worked on. And this is the thing which is interesting is there's this a lot of the people are like writing code and like building stuff and everything. They have this notion that the best tech actually wins. And if you build like the best thing ever, like it's going to be the one that's like the most successful. And in practice, like it's not always the case. And this is, I'm going to show like a very bad word next is like marketing. And so there's a lot of connotation and everything, but in practice, if you don't market your ideas, if you don't speak about them, if you don't write about them, like if you don't like get people excited about them, like nobody's actually going to like use them and going to like work on them, build on top of them and those kind of things. And so this is like one word marketing, but like there's many different ways you can think about it, but this is actually required. And I see a lot of people that are like really, really good ideas, like solving like real people problem, but they don't actually go out there and like talk about it and like get it in front of people. And so it stays a niche thing. And they also get super frustrated because they see all of those popular projects that are like they think is like less good, but they don't do the work. And so this is one of the recommendations I have for you is like you need to find a way to like have your project you're working on to be marketed. And this is the next point around this talk is open source is around people, is about people. And so this is what drives me to this world of open source. And this is the very interesting thing is like different people have different kind of skills. And so if you're the one building like the next generation of like crazy stuff or like project and everything, you may not be the one to actually do the marketing. And so one of the cool things about open source is that you can work with people like from all different places in the world with all different ages or like thinking and skills and everything. And they're all working together on building something. And so now the idea is like you're not alone, you can actually work with other people. And so now it's up to you as like managing like a project for it to be successful, to actually like seek out and figure out like how can you have like different people with different skills actually contribute to your project. And so for this, there's basically like one way to do it is you basically like put your head into the other people's side around like, if I was somebody else wanting to contribute, like, how do I contribute? What can I do? And in practice, a lot of like people that are maintaining open source projects don't like put themselves in the other people's shoes. And they're like, oh, I know my project and everything. And like people are suddenly like magically going to come and help. But you actually have to encourage them. You have to entice them. And so one example on the way I did this was with Excalidraw. So it was at this point like 3 days old project. I just did a tweet and like like probably like 100 lines of code. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put it on Twitter, GitHub, and write like 20 different to-dos. And this was like very successful because over the next like few weeks and few months, like a lot of people joined in and contributed things on that list. And one of the things that's very interesting with this kind of list is when you are the maintainer of a project, you know what you want things to happen in the project. But when you're from the outside, you don't know. And so you're going to like maybe try to do something, but it's very discouraging to work on something only for like the maintainer to say, no, actually, we don't want this. And so now as a maintainer, if you actually go and say like, hey, I want all of those things, now people are contributing, say, hey, if I spend the time and the energy working on them, I'm way more likely going to be actually contributing, and my ROI, like return on investment, is going to be positive. The other trick I'm using is to be very, very responsive and very reactive and make like fast decisions. And what I mean by this is whenever there's a pull request that's coming in, I try to like have it reviewed within like half an hour or an hour. And one of the very interesting things about this is if you're like within this time period, the person that has submitted the PR still have all of their environment set up, like all of their ID, all of their like things set up and everything. And so the cost of actually making a change is like super low. They're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to VS Code or Emacs or Vim or whatever, like press save, like send the pull request, and it's done. Now if you do it like 1 day, 2 days, a week later, now they actually have to like pull the repo again, like rebase, like do all of this work. And so this is a lot harder to do. And so people are going to be doing it less. And so if you want to encourage like people to contribute, like have a like super tight feedback loop. And so now like they're excited and they're going to work on the next thing and the next thing, and like now you hook them and they're going to work for you. And so this is one of the ways we can motivate people to start working on the open source projects. Now, one of the things I also want to put a caveat, like big caveat on this, is like I have 40,000 followers on Twitter. And so like when I did this, like a bunch of people like started like pouring in and like working on this. Now it's probably not going to be your experience, but you can start with like one colleague, one coworker, like a friend that you're making at this conference, and like start building up your network and give people tasks, because people are excited to like contribute. And so if you give them tasks, they're most likely going to do it. And so this is all about motivation. And one of the very interesting things about motivation is mostly like in the bigger world, like tied with money. And so one of the things is open source is not about the money, but like at some point as your open source project is going to grow and like more people are going to contribute, at some point they need to make a living, like people need to make a living out of this. So there's a lot of discussions around like money and like living wage and everything within open source. And so one thing I wanted to do with this talk is to talk about some of the ways like my project and like the efforts I've been in have been monetized. So the first one is actually my employer. So I'm working at Facebook, I'm working at Meta now. And this, like Mark Zuckerberg has always been like pro open source. And so it's been like super nice to like feel like empowered to actually work on open source. And this is like crazy because like React, we open source it, and now there's a whole conference about it. So like this is working. And the thing about this is the way like I position my work within the company is I don't work for open source. And so when I worked on Prettier, it was not to help like the broader community and everything. It was like, hey, Facebook had a problem, like people were spending way too much time doing diff reviews and were heated and those kind of things. And I wanted to solve this for Facebook. And the fact that it happened to be open source was like, yeah, this is a nice bonus, but Facebook paid me to solve the Facebook's problems. And so this was like this is always how I thought about like open source, is like I'm going to solve my problems first, and then there's nice incidentals about it. And so the good thing is like Mark Zuckerberg during the latest earnings made like 3 entire paragraphs about open source and like the qualities and everything. And so he mentioned at the beginning that like, yeah, we open source our infrastructure, not our products. And then the good thing is like if the open source project become like successful and mainstream, then like people are going to contribute to it, and we're going to see efficiency improvements, And then it's going to be industry standards. So like people are going to build on top of this. And now like, oh, we can just like plug it in within the company and it's going to work as well. And the last thing is like it's amazing for hiring. Like people, developers, like they want to work on open source and everything. And so if the company is doing it, now it's actually like a lot easier to hire people. And our front-end pipeline has always been like the highest, like the best pipeline within the company because of like the React ecosystem. And also like the last one is once you join the company, now if you've already been using it outside of the company, now you're going to be productive a lot like quicker and a lot faster. So this is like the meta level play around open source, and it's only going to work and be useful if the project has been massively successful in the first place. And so this is not something that like, oh, you're going to open source something and like 6 months later during your like calibration or whatever it's called, you're going to be able to say, hey, I helped the company, but it's going to be like 5 years, 10 years down the line, where like now if the project was successful, it's going to be useful. So this is like most of the project that I've personally worked is like Facebook is paying for my work, basically. So now this is not the only way. So the second way is donations. And so for Prettier, we set up, like there's a bunch of ways you can accept donations from the community. And we've gotten like $140,000 in lifetime donation for the project. And the way I've been thinking a lot about how to actually like give the money. And the way I settled down is we are paying 2 maintainers $1,500 a month. And we've been doing this for 2.5 years now, and it's working really well. And so if you want to help contribute to open source like as a financial way, or like if your company is doing some kind of like profit sharing or like donations to open source projects, like I don't know about the other project, but at least for Prettier, we're going to make good use of this money. Then the next one is what I call like paid hosting. And so this is the example of Excalidraw, where like it's open source. You can go to excalidraw.com and like use it and everything. But one thing that we've like received as feedback again and again and again is that, okay, this is an open source project. This is like fully end-to-end encrypted. But the challenge is like, if people within companies are going to write like their diagram, like it's going to be like very sensitive, like companies don't want to trust a random open source project. And so they want to have a company behind it and like a product they can actually buy and like have support and everything. And so this is where we created a company around this, and it's working really well. And so we have a plus product that costs $7 a month per person. And you can get like storage of all of your drawing, like collaboration. And we also have like specific things like this slides deck to like if you're like using the plan. So this is like one other way you can do it. And for this, we have like now a company of 10 people full-time working on this using this setup. And so this is like going to like having a successful like open source project, like you're not going to do it for the money most likely, because like there's probably like way better way to do it, but it doesn't mean that you cannot be set up for success like money-wise using this space. So this is where I originally wanted to like end this talk. And so this is like super shiny, like you're going to like do all of this stuff and you're going to be successful. But one other thing I wanted to like talk about is that a lot of the people organizing this like super like conference are really into like mental health. And you've probably seen a lot of like people mentioning like, oh, I'm a maintainer, I've burnout, and like all of those stories. And so I want to share like my story, like one of my stories around this, because this is in practice when you're like working on open source is something like, as I mentioned, like open source is all about people, and there's the good and the bad about people. And so I want to talk a bit about the dark sides of the open source. And so during the height of Black Lives Matter, like somebody wanted to like have a Black Lives Matter banner saying we sponsor the cause, we support the cause to one of the open source projects I was maintaining, and I didn't feel this was the right thing to do. And so I said, nope, I'm sorry, but I don't want to put this banner. And unfortunately, like the conversation like escalated, went sideways, and that person started attacking me on Twitter. And so I faced like a bunch of hate around this and everything. And then the thing is that they were also Facebook employees, and they ended up getting fired from the company and also posting it on Twitter. And what happened is this ended up being picked up by the news. And so there was like a CNN and like New York Times and like all of the major press like newspaper with like those headlines: Facebook fires employee in Black Lives Matter dispute. So like, and for me, like this was like very stressful, because now you got like the entire like world like basically like commenting on this and like attacking me in private. And I also got a lot of support, but this was like very stressful. And this is one of the things which is tricky like with open source, is like this is very public. And there's also like the veil on anonymity, where like a lot of people are behind the screens, behind a nickname, and like they don't, like they wouldn't say any of those things like to my face, but they feel that they can do it on the internet. And so as your products, like open source products, are going to grow, you're going to be actually facing some of these challenges. And the thing that really helped me during this time is a lot of people that were in this situation told me, hey, I've gone through like very similar events or like steps and everything, and this is how I manage it, and like this is like advice and resources and everything, and that really helped. And this is where like the way to fail like in open source, and especially in this kind of situation, like you feel like you're alone. You feel like you're the only one facing this, and like you don't have anyone to talk to. And it can be like very depressing, and you can like spiral really fast. But I felt like I had a very strong network thanks to the open source community. And so I highly recommend, like if you're facing some of those like issues, probably not as like bad as being featured on like CNN and New York Times, but like if you're facing similar issues where like somebody trolls on your like website or like attacks you on Twitter and everything, like my recommendation is for you to like seek out to other open source projects near you, or if you can't, like find me, I'm going to like be able to help, and like really reach out to people, because like everybody that have had a successful open source project have faced some of this in their life. This is unfortunate, but like this is the reality. So now it's out of the way. Now I think we can wrap up. And so my talk is, if you want to like succeed at open source, you need to internalize that open source is about people. And there's the good, the bad, but like the motivation. And so for this, the first thing you need to do is to solve a real problem for people. If you don't have this, like you're not going to be successful. You need to market it, you need to go out there, or to find somebody that are like really excited about it, that are going to be able to like share your message across. And you need to build a team. And so there's a lot of also issues where like, oh, you have like one person actually like working on this, and like now like they're the only one. So like go ahead and like build a team, think about like who can help over the long time. And at some point you're going to have to think about the money. And as a conclusion, you're not alone on the dark side. A lot of people can help you. So thanks everybody, and I hope you all get to be successful at open source if you want to.